So who we are. Revision Publishing is an indie publishing consulting firm dedicated to guiding authors through the self-publishing process. That's why I'm really, really excited about this first course, because this is like step one in continuing the process and building Revision Publishing. So these are the outcomes for today. Now, I just want to also note that each one of these outcomes could be its own course. So this is not going to be everything because it's so much information, but I at least want you to get an idea of the different elements and things that will be involved in this process. So that one, if you want more support or you need to reach out and you need more information, you can always contact us and set up a time that we can meet to speak about your specific project and or how you know how to go on and do further research in the various areas. So we're going to talk about publishing options. We're going to talk about your manuscript, building your story and doing the research. We're going to talk about writing goals, editing, book design, self-publishing components. I'm going to provide my contact information for you all. And then finally, we'll have an opportunity for questions. So what does it take to self-publish? Number one, it takes time. It takes a lot of time. You have to devote a large chunk of time to this endeavor. It takes money because it is not free. Now, I will add a caveat and say that, can you publish a book for free? Yes, you can. If you want to publish a book to sell to other people that is available for people to purchase through Amazon or something like that, then yes, it will cost you money. And the last thing is persistence. The reason why I put persistence is because it's so time consuming and because it does cost money. Sometimes you can get discouraged along the way. And so you just have to remember, like, what is your purpose? What is your goal? What is your outcome? And let that kind of dictate how you stay in the game, how you continue to stay motivated through the process. So you really have to be persistent. So let's talk about publishing options. So the very first option, and this is in no particular order, but the first option would be to self-publish with an agency. So what I mean by self-publishing with an agency is that you have some publishing companies that offer assisted publishing packages. What that means is you have maybe about $3,500 and you're not really interested in taking every single step in the process. So you can go and find a company that does this type of service, and then they will find the editors, they will help assist with the marketing plan, they will help with promotional materials, all included in the package. And I'm going to give you an example on the next slide of what I mean by self-publishing with an agency. Then you have publishing. This is the traditional way, where you publish with a literary agency or a traditional publishing house. Something to note, when you publish with a traditional publishing house, you have to go through an agent. Most large publishing houses will not take unsolicited authors' work, which means that you would then have to find a literary agent. Now, there are smaller publishing, more traditional publishing firms that will take unsolicited work, but you still have to go through the process of writing query letters and making sure that you have a really large following or a platform or an audience, because a traditional publishing house only wants to sign on an author who they know is going to be for sure successful. When you publish with a traditional publishing house, you give up your rights. What does that mean? That means that if you are stuck on your title, if everything that you've written in your manuscript you want to keep, when you go through a traditional publishing house, you give them the authority based on what's negotiated in the contract to say, we can change the title, we can change the cover idea, we can change some of the content, And there's so much more that goes into publishing with a traditional publishing house. So again, if that is an area that you're interested in, you can also let me know and I can give you much more information if you want to go down that road. However, I believe that most of you are here because you want to self-publish on your own. So self-publishing on your own is exciting because you have a built-in audience, and maybe you don't. If you don't have a built-in audience, you have a story, you have information that you want to share and get out to people, and you believe that people are going to buy it. Because that's the whole reason for writing the book, is that you want people to consume it. You want people to, or it may be part of another part of your business plan, but the book is essentially information that people need to know. Self-publishing on your own, you get to keep all of your rights, all of your creative control, but you do have to do all of the legwork. So we're going to get into what that means. So as I stated before, I was going to give you an example of a publishing company, some publishing companies where you can have the money and then they kind of help you through all the steps of the process. They make sure it gets copywritten. They'll help you with the ISBN, which all those things may sound foreign until I really explain what they are. But this is an example. I took this directly from tailormadenc.com, which is a company that does this type of work. So you can see they offer two main packages. If you complete a manuscript, they can assist you with your self-publishing endeavor. If you need a book, if you have or need a book, but it's in your head and you don't have it written out yet, they have an option where you can do from soup to nuts, where they actually help you write that book. If you can see down at the bottom of the screen, that one is more costly, of course, because they're actually doing the writing for you. Again, there are companies, there are people who can support you in the writing. If you don't necessarily want to pay this amount, this is only one example of a company that does this. Ingram Spark, Archway Publishing, Author House, there are a bunch of different organizations that will actually help you through the process if you don't want to do every step on your own. There are certain things that you may give up when you go through companies like this, because again, you are limited to their in-house illustrators, their in-house editors, their in-house people. And normally they keep it that way because they can keep their own internal costs down so that they can hire on the people that they need. If you're wanting outside work, they may have to like figure that into the contract that you all have together to make sure that everything works out. The other part of self-publishing. So self-publishing is a business in itself. So when you decide to self-publish, it requires a few business moves. Now, there may be some of you who have your own business already, and hopefully the book that you may want to write is in the same industry or wheelhouse of the business that you already have. If so, you can use that business name as your publishing company that you want to write under. So you don't have to start another business in order to write. So if you already have your own business, if you're already an entrepreneur, this will already help you because you already have customers, you already have a fan base, you already have a network of people, and then you can use that as leverage in order to create your book. If you don't have your own company, and let's say you don't want to start a publishing company like I did, then you can publish under your own name, which would be publishing under your pen name. The only thing that you may have issues or trouble with is that when you publish that way, it gives like a sign to people that they know that it's self-published. And there's still like a stigma against authors that self-publish. But now that so many people self-publish, it's not so much of a thing, but you just have to make sure, and we'll get to some of those things, that whatever product that you're putting out, the book that you put out into the world is polished, that it is clean and together so that people are not thrown off and it doesn't look like you just, made it yesterday. So you'll need to register a name. So that's doing business as, it's a DBA registry. And the other thing, whenever you're starting a business or doing anything business related, it's really good to seek out someone who is a professional in that area, so that they can provide you with all of the knowledge and information that you need for the type of business that you want to set up. And that's where you go into the business model. You'll need to have a banking account that is separate from your personal finances, because all of your book money you want to go separate, because when you file your taxes, which it's almost tax time anyway right now, you'll file like under sole proprietor, and they want to make sure that the money that you're earning is separate from that, just in case they want to audit and see what you were actually spending everything on. You just want to make sure you have a separate account so that everything is clear. And then financial bookkeeping, that's just something optional if you need to have a place to like audit and keep a record of all those things. If you don't make a certain amount of money each year, and you can talk to a tax lawyer about all of these things, the government will just see it as a hobby. And so they won't allow you certain tax write-offs if your business was current and making money. So again, seek out a professional for all of those specific details. All right, so my imprint is Revision Publishing LLC. Actually, when I first published the book, it was just Revision Publishing, and just recently I had it converted into an LLC. So I'm really excited about that, but we are moving forward. So let's get into this manuscript. Self-publishing starts with the manuscript. Writers write what they know, or they write what they're curious about. I mentioned before that if you already have a business, so I'm just going to use an example that, let's say you have a plumbing business, and you want to write a nonfiction book about plumbing, or maybe you want to do an informational book about plumbing, or how to do plumbing in your own home, how to I don't know anything about plumbing, so I don't know why I use this example, but how to unclog a toilet, or whatever the case may be, whatever your expertise is, you will write the things that you know about, because that's your niche, that's your industry. If you have an experience, that you feel like that there are certain people who would identify with that experience, you're going to write about your story. Maybe you're a creative like I am, and you have all these ideas of good stories because you've been watching television and you're tired of seeing the same storyline, and you want to write something, because that's the other reason why people write books as well, is because they want them adapted into film. And because there are so many platforms right now, a lot of those platforms are seeking out authors because authors have content. And so as long as you have stories, you have ideas, you have information, and it's in a book form, you have people that will need your story for Hulu, for Netflix, for all those different places. But the first step is to decide what you want to write about. Will you be writing a fictional story? Will it be a nonfiction story? Are you wanting to focus on writing a children's book? Or do you want to write a how-to book? The two picture examples that I have there is a friend of mine, Princesses Have Awkward Lives, Shanice Guidry. She went through Archway Publishing. So she went through a company that would allow her to pay the money, and she works with them through the process, but they pretty much do most of the legwork. Then you have another friend of mine, Dream Gunter, who wrote The Man Book, which is more of a self-help book, which he went through the whole process on his own and produced this book and sold directly to the consumer or to the readers. And through the book that he wrote, unintentionally, he was able to tour around the United States as a guest speaker at schools and different places because they were interested in the content that he wrote. So he didn't sell his book on Amazon. So there's different pathways that you can use, and that you can go through in order to get your book out to people. So what do you already know about, and what do you need to research? So even if you're an expert in your field, you're still going to have to do a significant amount of research. So there's two ends of the spectrum that we're working on. We're working with either you're writing fiction and you're building your story, or you're doing something nonfiction and you have to do the research in order to make sure that all the information that you're including in your manuscript is accurate, it's valuable, it's up to date. So if you're building a story, you want to make sure that your story has memorable characters, a great plot, and a catchy title. So I have an example there, pretty much like a plot diagram. So there's a specific like formula that you can use to writing a story if you're not already like well versed in like how to do creative writing or things of that nature. There are lots of resources that you can use to kind of assist you in getting your story written. The other part of that is doing the research. So looking at different books that are within the genre that you want to write in and seeing what they do. What are their stories about? The other thing you also would like to do, if you have like a title in your head, Google it and see if there are other titles that exist under that specific name. And the reason why is because when you write your book, if it's a common title or something that's already used, you don't want to get confused with that book title. And you also don't want to get drowned out by another title that you have the same one. So people might be confused. So you have to do a lot of research either way on both sides, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. It's important to know the industry that you're writing in. So if you're not already a part of certain associations or groups or clubs, then it would really be important to get involved in those things to find out like what do people want to know? What do they need so that you can write the story that directly addresses that. So you again are creating a niche for yourself and an audience. So again, I already said this, find a few books in your genre to study. So for example, let me see if I have anything around here. If you wanted to write a book on relationships, you probably want to go and see what books already exist on that specific thing that you want to talk about. It can be directly related to something that you've experienced, which is probably better because then you have a personal story that goes with it. And then again, you can visit certain groups, organizations, and then you can be a speaker for their events that they have. And if you have a book that directly relates to that industry or that topic, then after you're done speaking, you can refer people to your website or to the actual book so that they can purchase it because they're going to want to know more information. So find a few books in your genre, look and see what it includes. For example, if you're writing a nonfiction book, you're probably going to have a table of contents. So you want to see how is that table of contents formatted. You want to see like how are they designing each chapter. You want to look at everything. You want to look at the information. You might even consider researching the publishing company that published the books. If you have a few books already that you love in that genre, research the publishing company and find out if you want to publish through that company, how to get in contact with that company, and or just look to see what do the professionals do and how can I make sure that the book that I put out looks just like someone who a traditional publishing house that produced the book professionally. So one of the hardest parts is writing, right? The actual manuscript and putting it together. So this section is more about how do you set writing goals to make your final manuscript achievable. So there are 3 ways: daily goals, weekly goals, and monthly goals. So with your daily goals, you should set aside a few hours each day that you're willing to write and commit to writing. So if you're an early riser, then you might want to wake up an hour before everything else that you have to do and dedicate an hour, to writing your story or your book or putting information down at the beginning of the day. If rising early is not your thing, like for me, that's not my thing. I had to set aside time like in the middle of the day or at the end of the day or at night that I'm willing to dedicate a few hours to write. If the daily writing goal doesn't work for you, you might have like a page goal. Like I want to write 10 pages for this book and I want to have those 10 pages done by a certain amount of time. whatever is most feasible to you, you want to make sure that you put it down in a calendar or on paper so that you can keep yourself accountable to those writing goals. You want to make sure that you have about 15 hours a week set aside for writing. But the other thing is, you also need to pace yourself, because there may be days when you're really, really inspired to write, and then you might have another day where you're not as inspired to write. So, depending on how your days fluctuate, you'll need to have to make up for it. So, if you go 3, 4 days without writing, that means that once you hit the weekend, you need to set aside a good chunk of time, maybe 5 hours, to write and put things together. Before COVID, I used to ride BART. So in the Bay Area, we have Bay Area Rapid Transit, which is our transit system. And I would be on the BART train and I would have my laptop and I would just start writing on the train. Or if you have a cell phone, you start putting your ideas in a notepad. But you want to make sure that you're capturing your writing somewhere on a consistent basis so that you're able to get all your writing done. The other thing is you want to, when you're setting your timeline overall, for example, if I have a 3-month writing goal and I'm trying to reach maybe 40,000 words, which averages out to be about 215 pages. If I want to write 215 pages in 3 months, then I can do backwards planning to determine how many pages, how many words do I need to write a month? What would that be for the week? And what would that be for the day? And then you can determine which days of the week and what set hours that you actually want to write within. So once you finish your manuscript and you're like, oh, I'm so happy, it's done. It's not actually done, but at least you got everything out on paper. This is where you actually start the process of editing. My suggestion is to have a few people who you are, let's say, close to, but people who are interested in the genre that you're writing, but also who aren't people who are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Find about 2 people that you can trust with your manuscript. So you're going to send them your manuscript and you're going to tell them to read it and then give you as much feedback as they can offer. So I say a variation of readers. Really, I'm saying like 2 people, maybe at most 3, but people who can give you and read it with a different lens and provide you with different feedback. Now, I know most of you will be tied to your work and tied to your story, so you don't have to take their suggestions. But the purpose of it is because now someone with a different eye, a different lens, a different perspective can read your work and offer things that maybe you didn't see, that you looked over, things that you thought were clear that are unclear to someone else. And they can give you that feedback prior to actually doing the professional editing. So having a friend or having a close person read it is not in place of professional editing. You have to get a professional editor. That is mandatory. If you're planning to go through a traditional publishing house, you have to have your writing to a really good point for authors or for the publishers to want to read it and take it seriously. Because if you're sending them something that's really rough and that hasn't been edited and that's all over the place, they're not going to take it. They're not even going to read it. They're going to probably look at it and see that it's not formatted correctly and quickly pass on it. So you want to make sure that you're polishing and getting things together as much as possible before you decide which direction that you want to go in. Just to note, even if you decided to self-publish a book, you can always still take that same book that's been self-published to a traditional publishing house for them to publish as well. Just again, they may change the title, they may change the cover, they may change some of the content, but that's kind of what you give up when you go to the publishing house. So we're going to talk about professional editing because that costs money. And there's obviously a range of the costs for editing. You have 2 types. Well, there are multiple types, but the 2 main types is copy editing and content editing. Copy editing is focused more on formatting. Formatting, making sure that everything is together for print. So they'll make sure that it's the correct size based on traditional standards, normal size, trim size, just using some of the jargon, is from like 5.5 inches by 8 inches to like 6 by 9 is a normal size. They created the normal size based on what they feel like can fit on a bookshelf. So if you sell your book, like people can take it and they can put it on their bookshelf if they have one. But the actual size of the book will determine the number of pages that your book will have. So again, I shared this before, about 43,000 words is about 200 to 215 pages. And that's also average if you're writing for adults. If you're writing for children, you want to also research how many words for the actual age group that you're writing in, because young children, they don't read as many words as adults do. So copy editing is focusing on pretty much just the format. They will look at your word usage, grammatical errors, jargon, making sure things are in line with the genre that you're writing in. Content editing, which is a lot more expensive, is editing because now they're looking at the actual development. Are things in the right order? Do they make sense? Should you move one element to the end versus having it in the beginning? And this is where they cover structure, coherence, logical organization, all of those things. You have some editors who do a combination of both. So they might have one price and they'll do copy editing and content editing. You have editors who work as ghostwriters. You have editors who work who will do like coaching. So they'll help you write through the process. Let's say if you feel like I'm not a good writer, I know I want to write a book, you can hire someone to write it for you. But again, that's an additional cost. This slide, I really just added just for informational purposes, because when you have an editor, they, especially editors who are doing typesetting, more so your copy editor, they are looking at these different elements and trying to make sure that everything looks good. So when you read a book, I'm trying to find it, I don't have all my books handy, I'll just use this one as an example. When you look at a book, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but you see the alignment where the words fit the page and they're not bleeding over, or it's not what they call like raggedy ends or things like that. They make sure all of those things are aligned. And I'm going to share something with you closer to the end about ways that you can find editors and resources to support you in this process. But this is just some of the things that they're looking for. So you can, when you're talking to the editors, like say, like, I want to just make sure that these things are covered in your costs. So I mentioned before, if you're planning to write a children's book, writing a children's book, the second step after you finish your manuscript is illustration. And illustration is a whole nother cost on its own. Illustration could be maybe as low as like $2,500, depending on who, if you know someone personally, or it can be upwards to like $10,000 for illustration. And that is, again, a whole nother class in itself, because that's a process that I'm going through now. But just so you know, once you finish your manuscript, if you're writing a children's book, and it's, I should say, a children's picture book, then the second step would be illustration. All right, let's talk about the book cover, because this is something that is very, very important. So you'll need to have a concept. So you're going to find somebody who's going to do this design. And again, hopefully this person is a professional. Some of you may have expertise in graphic design. Maybe you are able to mock up something on your computer. It's not suggested, but there are so many different sites, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, that you can use that aren't so costly to get a cover done. So you'll need to have a concept. You'll need to know what you want your book cover to look like and what you don't want it to look like. So that once you sit down and begin communication with your designer, you can let them know exactly what you need and what you're looking for. Find covers in your genre to see like what is the standard for covers for this type of writing. Um, if you have favorites, again, of a concept that you like, you want less is more, so you don't want a whole lot going on in your cover, you just want words, then you can look at examples and use that to help guide you with your cover. And then of course you want to make sure that your cover relates to the content and also relates to your audience, right? So if you're writing something that's maybe geared towards like young adult readers, you don't want to have anything that's like sexually explicit on the cover, because that obviously doesn't relate to your audience and is inappropriate for that type of book. So then you're going to find a designer. As I said before, don't do it on your own unless you're a professional in this area. And let's talk about why. So book cover elements. Your book is going to be judged by its cover. So, you know, most of the time people say, don't judge a book by its cover, but it will be judged by the cover, because you pick it up and you're like, this looks interesting. And then you might flip it over, and then that's when you read the back. And then that's when you might decide like, okay, this is a book that I want to read. Personally, for this book, my book, Beyond the Hurt, because that's an example of my cover on display here. I am writing in African-American urban fiction, right? Urban, most of the time, makes people think about like guns, violence, sex, drugs, all those different things, right? Although there's some of those elements in the book, I didn't want to be pigeonholed into just catering to an African-American audience. Although I am an African-American.
Like a heart attack.
I'm sorry, question? Okay, although I am writing to that audience, I didn't want my book just to gear towards that audience. So when I was in the very beginning stages of creating the book, the first design that they gave me was this young, you know, African-American girl on the cover. And I said, no, I don't want that on the cover. I don't want any people per se. I had an idea, and then I was able to work with them with the cover that you see in front of you. Costs can range from $200 and up. As I mentioned in the very, very beginning, you can always find things for free, but I will say you get what you pay for. So you can find free covers, you can find free things. Just make sure whatever you find is quality, and then make sure that however you're going to print the book, that the printing quality matches what they require to print it, so your book doesn't look pixelated, so it doesn't look faded, or any of those things that can happen if it doesn't have the right resolution, or if it's not according to the standards that are required for printing. The other elements that you would include on your cover is a barcode. The barcode has the ISBN number on it. It also has the cost. You can decide to put the cost on the book, or you can leave it off of the book. You can put your social media contact, you can put your website, your logo. If your book has been reviewed, let's say you took your manuscript and you sent it to some organizations to review it, or writing contests or anything like that, you can put those awards and recognitions on the book. If you have some people who, like I already said, reviewed, and you want to add that to the cover, like reviewed by this person who might, you know, be a celebrity or renowned or have an influencer or something like that, you can put those quotes on the back of the book to help people generate like that buzz. And there are other things that you can also add, but these are just some of the other things that you can put an author picture, you can put your bio, but you need to have some information about what the book is about. So if someone picks it up, they can read it and get an idea of what they are going to purchase. So pricing, You'll be able to find someone who can do it for a few $100s. And if you don't want to spend that, or you want to search other avenues, I included some websites where they have websites where they already have covers designed, and they haven't been used for books. So you can go and like buy those designs for something that's inexpensive. And then once you purchase that design, no one else can use it. So you have people, graphic designers, who design like lots of covers, and they send them to these websites, and then they're selling their work. So there are no royalties that are attached to it. You buy the work, it's yours, and that's your book cover. 99 Designs, which is a popular one. Basically, they do a contest for people to bid on being able to design your book cover. And then you just pay them for whoever you choose as the winner, you pay them the amount that you selected for that book title. When you're working with a book designer, you want to make sure that you're clear on the terms and your timeline overall for when you're trying to have the book released. So again, it goes back to that idea of backwards planning. So if we're now in January and you want to have your book released by, let's say, November of this year, you will need to make sure that within your time frame, you have enough time to write and edit and go through that process of getting your book together. Then you go through the process of designing the cover, and then all the other steps that we're going to talk about, that you have all of that done within enough time, because you still have to do marketing and all these other things, so that you can release your book by November. So that's why you want to make sure like you have a realistic date and that you stay within the confines of that timeline. So you need to let your designer know, I need this book done by March. And then you create like a contract and an agreement based on those parameters. And when you're working with your designer, the more details you can offer them, the better. Because again, it becomes like a back and forth process. You give them the ideas, the concept, and then they produce something, and then they bring it back to you. And then you say, oh, great, this is perfect. You got on the first try, then you guys are good. But if not, then you might have to go back and forth a few times in order for it to be exactly what you want. It's the same thing with editing. Editing is a long process because, again, it's a back and forth, making sure that everything is clear and good before you actually go to print, because you want to make sure that there are no mistakes. Now, you can also use social media. So I know like on Facebook or Instagram, you can, ask for recommendations. And the good thing about that is that they come with referrals. So like people that if they're within your network, they can say, oh, you can use this person. I know that they're good. And then that kind of like weighs out all the rest of the things that you might find when you don't know a person and you have to get to know them. It's always about a good fit too, because you want them to be bought into your book idea so that they can create something that makes sense to your project overall. A term that you might hear once you get going into this self-publishing process is book metadata. And book metadata really just means your book description. So your book description includes the title of the book. So you want to make sure, again, that it's original, that it's memorable, and that it's searchable, because you want people to be able to go on Google and search up your book and find it so that they can purchase it. A book description. So once your book is written, then you'll need a summary, about 150 to 200 words, to describe what your book is about so that people can get an idea, so that it lets them know if they want to read it or not. An ISBN. So if you want your book printed so that you can have an electronic book format, you can have a printed book format, you can have an audio book format. If you want your book printed so that it can be sold in stores, you're going to need an ISBN number. There is a lot of information about ISBNs, but the main things that I really want to stress is, if you're going to take your book and sell it directly to people, because maybe you have your own business, so you do like tours and you speak, and you're going to sell your book directly to the people who will buy it, then you don't necessarily need an ISBN, if you will, or a barcode or those things, because you're just going to have it printed up to just sell directly to people. Most people are not writing for that purpose, so you will need an ISBN and you will need a barcode. ISBN is also your book's fingerprint. and it has all the information, and it also is connected to you. If you go through a company like Archway Publishing that I was explaining before and gave you an example, like you give them the money and they kind of do the steps for you, they may own your ISBN, which means that you can't take that book and reproduce it in a bunch of different formats because you don't own the rights to it. So when you publish on your own and you are your publisher or your company is your publisher, you own the rights to that ISBN, and you can put it in and duplicate it in whatever formats that you want to because it's yours. Electronic books do not require ISBNs. Some companies will say, oh yeah, you can have one, or the major ones like Kindle, iBooks, Nook, Playbooks, and Kobo, they don't require it. They'll give you an ASIN number, which basically is like their ISBN for electronic purposes. So those are free. There are the place that you'll purchase an ISBN is myidentifiers.com. They're the United States supplier for ISBNs. They're the only place that you can get them from if you want to purchase them as your self-publisher. But I will give you more information on other ways that you can purchase an ISBN that is a little cheaper than the $125 it will cost to buy one ISBN from Boker. So then it's time to share your story with the world. So you have to determine, like, what format do you want to write the book? Is it going to be an ebook? Is it going to be an audiobook? Is it going to be a paperback? Is it going to be a hardcover? Because all of those different elements will determine what cost you will have to pay. And there are options that will help you so that you can print and do these things in a costly way. The major book retailers, I've already kind of said that. For ebook, you can either do it as a Kindle ebook file or an EPUB file. And then you have programs that will also convert your Microsoft document into an ebook format. So you don't necessarily have to pay someone to do that, but there are editing services that do it automatically. So it's not like an extra cost that you have to pay. And then the printing retailers, you have Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark is the only place, not the only place, but it's the major retailer that will allow you to print hardcover. KDP, which is owned by Amazon, it used to be CreateSpace. They do not print hardcover books. So if you want a hardcover book, you'll have to go through Ingram Spark or Lightning Source or some other company to print a hardcover book. KDP will only do paperbacks. And so I'm looking at the time, so I'm trying to make sure that I get through these elements, and I will still stay on for questions if you have those at the end, because we did kind of start a little bit late, and I know some people came on later. The most important, or I guess the second most important thing after you write your book is marketing your book. So there are tons of ways that you can use to marketing your book. The most important thing that you want to have is an author website. Again, if you have your own business, then you don't need an author website because you're using your business to write under, but you'll need a section of your business website to make sure that you're leading people to your book. Again, your book should be related to your business if you're writing in that way. If you're not, then you'll need something separate in order to sell your book, because you don't want to cross those paths if they don't relate. You can create a book trailer. You want to host author events or attend author events. So you can, they have book selling events where you can go and rent a booth and sell your book. You want to have a release event where you sign your book and have people to purchase it. You want to have a presence on social media. And again, depending on what type of book that you're writing, you're going to want to go into that social circle. You have to go into that social media platform area, right? So if you're writing for teenagers, as some teenagers recently told me, they're not on Facebook. So you don't want to create and do all this energy into Facebook when your audience is not there. So the main thing is when you're doing all of your research is going into the areas where your audience goes, and making sure that you have a presence there so that you can connect with them and market your book, because marketing your book equals sales, and that's what you want. You want to sell your book. You can purchase online ad campaigns. Amazon in itself has a whole like course curriculum information about how to best market on Amazon. You can research those things. One thing that I will make sure that I stress at this point, ARCs are advanced reader copies. So before your book is totally done, you can take printed copies of it. So maybe it's not all the way polished, but it's finished for the most part. And you can send those out to people to review the book. And if they really like it, they'll write you a review. And then that review can go with your book when you start marketing and promoting it, because you can say like, oh, and it got 5 stars from such and such, or the industry that you were interested in also backs the book, or they can also create a buzz about the book because now there's anticipation about this new book that's coming out, and they will, you can do pre-orders. So you can send the book out to people to kind of create that buzz. Before you're ready to print, these are the different things that you'll need. Library of Congress number is optional. If you're writing a fictional book, you don't necessarily need this, because the Library of Congress control number is really about if you wanted your book to go into the library, and it's about their cataloging system so they know where to place it for people who want to read it. The Library of Congress is connected with copyrights, but they're two totally separate things. We already talked about the ISBN number, which is the International Standard Book Number. You can purchase it through KDP, which again is Amazon, for $99, or you can purchase through Ingram Spark for $85. The only difference with Ingram Spark is you need to have an actual publishing company that you're publishing under. And again, you don't have the rights, the same rights to the ISBN if a company gives it to you for free, because they have free options for ISBNs. But again, if you don't care who your book is published under, if you buy your ISBN, or if you get a free ISBN, I should say, I don't want to confuse you, from KDP or Ingram Spark, it will list them as a publisher and not yourself. So when you purchase it, it will list whatever imprint name that you decided on. There are places where you can get barcodes for a cheap price or even free. So it's really just doing the research to find out about that. Copyright, every book has to have a copyrights page on the back of the title page. So it's a left facing page. The main thing that you need to include in your copyrights page is the copyright year and your name and all rights reserved. And then there's some other jargon that you can put in there as well. But the main thing is that it's copywritten, the year, who it's copywritten by, the publisher, and your ISBN number. Determine what format your book is going to be in. And there's multiple formats. So it's like written format, book format, genre format, like all that stuff. You just have to decide how you want to present it. And that's through your research. You'll have to determine the cost of your book, like how much you want to sell your book for. Again, that's why you do the research, find books in your area. How much is the average cost or going rate for a book of that caliber? And then you set your cost around there. I do know somebody who set their book costs at like $100 because that's what they felt the value is. So you also don't have to go with what the standard is, but just make sure that people are willing to pay for whatever it costs you set. And then other things that you can include in the front matter of the book, which is just the beginning pages of your book, is a dedication page if you want to dedicate the book to anyone or any entity or thing, acknowledgements, and you can also include like a foreword, maybe somebody else, you lean on somebody else to write like an introduction to your book. You can include those elements if you like. So these are the manuscript to publishing components. Some of these things, I mean, most of them I've already kind of talked about. The only additional thing that's here that I want to outline is a business plan, marketing plan, if you're deciding to create your own company and take all those steps, making sure that whatever book that you're writing, you have like a bigger plan for other books that you want to write. The other thing is, if you're going to self-publish, you want to self-publish because you have multiple books you want to write. If you only have one book idea, then you should probably go through one of those publishing companies that can assist you in the process, because it doesn't make sense to go through all of these steps for just one book. And then again, if writing is something that you want to do on a regular basis, joining a writers organization within your community or local area. They normally have webinars, they bring in guest speakers, they do writing workshops. It's about $100 or less on average for a year membership. And it comes with a lot of perks, and they might promote for you as well. So that would be my suggestion. So we have reached the end, and I'm like pretty much on time. This is my contact information. If you are like super serious about like, I'm ready to like get started now, and you want more information about any of these things or something else that maybe I didn't touch, please reach out to me. Please contact me. I want to be supportive with you. Maybe we can work together in making sure that you get that book. Where's my book? Get that book in hand. I know it's behind me too. But the other thing is readsy.com. If you've never heard of Readsy, you can go, you can check it out. I have a link here. This link is like a benefit for the both of us. It gets you marketplace credit, which means that when you want to hire somebody to edit your book or design it or whatever, because you don't have to use their services, it's free to sign up. But if you do want to use it, it gives you credits in their marketplace. So once you get to the point of like hiring somebody to do the work with you, they'll take off whatever credits that you have stored from that cost. So it'll save you a little money. It will also allow you to format your book that you're writing right there in there for free. It will convert it for free. You'll be able to download it for free, and you could take it just straight from Readsy and upload it, which I wouldn't suggest, to a place and have it printed up, but it is a great resource. Last thing before you go, I do have Self-Publishing 201 that has pretty much all this information and a little bit more available on Gumroad, and you can use those links to follow it. I will do my best to send this PDF to you all, so you at least have the links and the resources for, you know, coming today and being a part of this free course. I do ask for your support only if you feel like it's necessary and it's valuable.